In the summer of 1762, in the royal palace of Joseon, the kingdom that would one day become South Korea, a king gave an order. He ordered his son to climb into a wooden chest, a rice chest, roughly the size of a large trunk, sealed with a lock from the outside. The prince was 27 years old. It was July, the Korean summer. The temperature inside a sealed wooden box in direct sun would have been unbearable within hours. The king did not open the chest. He listened to his son die over the course of 8 days. This is the story of Crown Prince Sado, the heir to the Joseon throne, who was executed by his own father without a trial, without a formal charge, and without a single blow being struck. And of King Yeongjo, the man who ordered it, lived another 14 years and spent every one of them trying to understand what he had done. Crown Prince Sado was born on February 13, 1735. He was the second son of King Jeongjo, the 21st monarch of the Joseon dynasty, and his birth was received as a moment of profound relief by the royal court. Yeongjo's first son had died in infancy. The dynasty required an heir. Sado's arrival secured the succession. From the earliest accounts of his childhood, Sado demonstrated the qualities the court had hoped for. He was intelligent, physically capable, and showed an early aptitude for the classical studies that formed the foundation of Joseon scholarly culture. Court records from his early years described a child who absorbed instruction quickly and who showed genuine curiosity about history, military strategy, and the administrative principles that governed the kingdom. King Yeongjo took an active interest in his son's education, perhaps too active. Yeongjo was a monarch of exceptional intelligence and equally exceptional severity, a king who had navigated the brutal factional politics of the Joseon court for decades and who held precise, uncompromising standards for the behavior of everyone in his household, including his children. The relationship between father and son was never warm. Court records suggest that Sado, from a young age, was acutely aware of his father's disappointment in his performance, in his choices, in the gap between what Jeongjo expected and what Sado was. This awareness, historians have argued, became the seed of everything that followed. Sometime in Sado's late adolescence, the historical record places it around his 16th or 17th year, something changed. The precise nature of what changed has been debated by Korean historians for over 2 centuries. The most detailed account comes from the Hanjung Nak, a memoir written years later by his wife, Lady Hyegyeong, who witnessed the deterioration firsthand and documented it with a combination of grief and unflinching clarity that makes her account one of the most extraordinary documents in Korean literary history. Lady Hyegyeong described a young man who began to show signs of severe psychological disturbance, extreme anxiety in the presence of his father, anxiety so acute that Sado would become physically ill before required audiences with Yeongjo, episodes of irrational rage that escalated over years into violence, a growing disconnection from the rituals and responsibilities of court life that his position demanded. She described with painful specificity acts of violence that Sado committed within the palace walls, against court attendants, against servants, against people whose proximity to his deteriorating state put them in danger. She did not excuse these acts. She documented them as evidence of a mind that was destroying itself from within, in an environment that offered no mechanism for help and no language for what was happening. In the Joseon court of the 18th century, there was no framework for mental illness in a crown prince. There was only performance or failure. Sado was failing, visibly, dangerously, and in full view of a court that had no tools to address it and every reason to pretend it wasn't happening. King Jeongjo is remembered by Korean histories as one of the greatest monarchs in Joseon history. This is not a complicated assessment to support. His reign of 52 years, the longest in the dynasty, was marked by genuine reform. He restructured the tax system to reduce the burden on the poor. He worked to reduce the factional violence that had destabilized the court for generations. He promoted scholarship, expanded educational access, and left behind a body of administrative achievement that shaped Korean governance for decades after his death. He was also, by every account available to us, a profoundly difficult father. The dynamic between Yeongjo and Sado was shaped by forces larger than either of them. Yeongjo had survived the Joseon court's factional politics through a combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, and the ability to present an image of absolute control. Control was not merely a preference for Yeongjo, it was the mechanism by which he had remained alive and on the throne. A crown prince who was, visibly, increasingly, uncontrollably disturbed was not merely a personal grief, he was a political liability of the most dangerous kind. The court factions that surrounded Yeongjo watched Sado's deterioration with calculating attention. Some sought to exploit it, some sought to contain it. All of them understood that the question of what would happen to the crown prince was also the question of what would happen to them. By 1762, Sado's behavior had reached a point that the court could no longer manage or conceal. Lady Hyegyeong's account from this period is the most harrowing section of the Hanju Nook. She describes escalating violence, erratic behavior that had become impossible to predict or contain, and a young man who had, in many ways, ceased to be present in the way that court life required. Yeongjo summoned Sado to the palace courtyard on July 4, 1762. What passed between them in that meeting has been reconstructed from court records, Lady Hyegyeong's memoir, and the accounts of attendants who were present. The king ordered his son to die. Sado, by the accounts available, did not resist. He is recorded as having expressed remorse. For what, exactly, the records are not entirely clear. Yeongjo ordered the rice chest brought to the courtyard. Sado climbed in. The chest was sealed. It remained sealed for 8 days. Food and water were withheld. Court records note that Yeongjo was informed of the sounds coming from the chest during the first days, and that he did not rescind the order. Sado died on July 12, 1762. He was 27 years old.
What happened after Sado's death was, in its own way, as extraordinary as what preceded it. Yeongjo lived for 14 more years following his son's death. He died in 1776 at the age of 82, one of the oldest monarchs in Joseon history. By every account available, those 14 years were marked by something that court records struggle to name cleanly, but that reads across the distance of centuries as grief compounded by guilt. He spoke of Sado rarely in public. He issued an edict shortly after the death that restricted discussion of the circumstances, an edict that served both political purposes and the more personal purpose of a man who could not hear the story retold without confronting what he had chosen. He gave his son a posthumous title, Sado, meaning thinking with sorrow, that has been interpreted by historians as simultaneously an act of official distancing and a private acknowledgement of what had been lost and how. Lady Hyegyeong outlived both her husband and her father-in-law. She spent decades in the Joseon court as the widow of a prince who had been erased from the official succession, present, respected in protocol, and in every meaningful sense alone with a grief that the court had no language for. Sado's son survived. He would become King Jeongjo, the 22nd monarch of Joseon and one of the most celebrated kings in the dynasty's history. His reign was marked by cultural renaissance, administrative reform, and a deliberate, sustained effort to rehabilitate his father's memory within the constraints of what Joseon political culture would allow. Jeongjo moved the royal tomb, He performed memorial rites with a frequency and personal investment that court observers noted as exceptional. He commissioned scholarship. He built a new city, Hwaseong, in what is now Suwon, in part as a monument to his father's memory and in part as a political statement about the rehabilitation of the Sado line. He never formally overturned the official record of his father's death. To do so would have been to implicitly condemn his grandfather, whose legitimacy underwrote his own. He worked within the silence instead, shaping memory through ceremony, architecture, and the slow pressure of a son's grief on the institutions that had created it. The Hanjeong Nook, Lady Hyegyeong's memoir, was completed in 1805. She was 70 years old. She had been writing it in sections for decades. It is considered one of the masterpieces of Korean literature, a document that preserves, in a woman's voice, the human reality behind one of the most debated events in Korean royal history.
The death of Crown Prince Sado has never been fully explained. The historical record is extensive but incomplete. Lady Hyegyeong's memoir is the most detailed source available, but it was written by a woman navigating the politics of the court she still inhabited, decades after the events she described. It is honest in ways that are remarkable. It is also shaped by what could and could not be said. King Yeongjo left no direct account of his reasoning. The edicts he issued and the titles he bestowed speak obliquely to a grief and a guilt that he never articulated in terms historians can quote directly. He was a king. Kings do not explain themselves. They act and they live with what they have done. And occasionally, the living with it is visible enough in the record that those who come later can begin to read it. What Korean historians have continued to debate is the question at the heart of the case. Was Sado mentally ill in a way that constituted a genuine danger to the court, to the dynasty, to people within the palace walls? Lady Hyegyeong's account suggests yes, with a specificity that is difficult to dismiss. Was the response to that illness, sealing a man in a wooden chest in July heat, a response that any definition of justice or mercy could accommodate? The historical record offers no framework in which the answer to that question is yes. What remains is a story about a father and a son in a system that gave them no language for what was happening between them, and no mechanism to resolve it that did not end in destruction. Jeongjo built Hwaseong. He performed the rites. He moved the tomb. He never stopped being the son of a man who died in a rice chest. He never stopped being the grandson of the man who sealed it. The chest itself no longer exists. The question of what happened inside it and why has never been closed.